The world's white-collar middle class, what I call the laptop class, is about to go extinct. Why? There are three key reasons, and we will cover them one by one in this video. First, college education no longer guarantees a good job to anyone. Second, and this is of course related, AI is eating up all routine knowledge work, what has till now been the bread and butter for the middle class. And third, and probably the most important, global capitalism is changing dramatically and it is making the middle class, the laptop class, entirely redundant. But before I do a deep dive into this and give you the details, a quick reminder. If you like my videos, please stop for a second and subscribe to my channel. Your one click will send a signal to YouTube's algorithm to show my videos to more people, and that will help sustain the channel and encourage me to keep producing this kind of content. Okay, let's begin with point number one, the collapse of graduate employment. And stick with me here because the numbers are quite shocking really. For more than 60 years now, a college degree has been an ordinary middle class family's ticket to affluence, to power, and sometimes even fame. Initially, right after the Second World War ended, when the West was rebuilding itself, a liberal arts education gave people a shot at a stable government job which also paid reasonably well. But from the 1980s, the picture changed dramatically. Now, private companies began to run every aspect of modern economies. Corporates needed, therefore, hundreds of thousands of intellectual workers to manage, supervise, and run their businesses. Alongside that came the financial revolution of the 90s, which caused a massive boom in investment banking, stock market investments, currency and bond markets, retail banking, and many other finance-related functions. Corporate disputes increased, both between businesses and with the government, and so did litigation over property rights. This made the legal profession an extremely lucrative option for the middle class, causing an explosion of law firms across the world. And there was another kind of white collar work that mushroomed. That's corporate consultancy. Big consultancy firms became the most prized destination for white collar workers. And beneath all this, forming the backbone, was the IT and tech industry, which employed hundreds of thousands of white collar workers across the world, including here in India. All of these caused a massive ballooning of well-paid white-collar jobs in the wider corporate sector. And as the middle class became more and more affluent and also aspirational, it increased the market for businesses that were earlier only patronized by the rich. For instance, hotels and high-end restaurants, travel and tourism, especially foreign travel, the fashion industry, interior decor and lifestyle, private news channels, especially business TV, and each of these created their own white-collar jobs. High-end architects, chefs, fashion designers, hairstylists, news anchors and senior reporters, and even celebrities who were famous for just living a fabulous life. They were famous for being famous. And the golden ticket to all this was a professional degree, like an MBA, a degree in law or computer science, a fashion designing course, and so on. In short, having a college degree opened the gates to affluence for people who did not directly own capital or they had not inherited a lot of property. In the past couple of years, this has collapsed completely. The data here is stark and frankly pretty scary for people like me who have children who will be looking for jobs soon. Let's start with the USA. Unemployment among American college graduates between the age of 22 to 27 now stands at 5.7%, which is significantly higher than the overall unemployment rate of 4.3%. So, for the first time in US history, you have a higher chance of not getting a job if you have a college degree. The golden ticket to affluence has become a liability now. And even this figure hides a dirty secret: underemployment, which is polite government speak for a barista who has an MBA, a warehouse employee who has a math degree, or a shop attendant who has done computer science. The number of young American graduates who are underemployed, not unemployed, underemployed, stands at a whopping 42% right now. That's a complete waste of 4 years or more spent on getting a degree. And by the way, if you think that a degree from an Ivy League college or a top business school protects graduates from the current job famine, think again. 2024-25 was probably the worst in terms of job placements for the M7, the top 7 business schools in the US. At Chicago Booth in 2021, only 2.3% of students were left without an offer after 3 months after graduating. In 2024, that number shot up to 13.2%. At Stanford's Graduate School of Business, the proportion of graduates without offers rose from 4% in 2021 to 12% in 2024. At the Kellogg School, the number has jumped from 2.9% in 2021 to 10.2% in 2024. And finally, at Harvard Business School, the most sought after business school in the world, in 2024, 15% of students were left without job offers 3 months after graduation. Things have been better for the class of 2025. That is mainly because students pivoted from finance and consulting to accepting relatively lower level jobs in the tech industry. Total compensation for young graduates with MBA degrees on average has fallen for the second straight year in the US. Many business school students are choosing to become entrepreneurs now after failing to land good jobs. In effect, the word founder is increasingly becoming an euphemism for unemployed Harvard MBA. The situation is the same for those who were doing mid-career MBAs. A large number of them have chosen to return to their original employer, preferring the safety of their old job instead of trying to leverage their degree to get something better. The situation is equally bad in top law firms. The first tremors actually came 2 years ago when median salaries fell 3% despite high retail inflation in the previous 2 years, which would normally have caused salaries to rise. Then last year, for the first time ever, most law firms in the US chose experienced hires over fresh law graduates. Earlier, elite law firms would fight to recruit first-year students from top law schools as interns. Now the tables have turned completely. Compared to November 2024, 1 year later, there's been a 10 to 13x increase in the number of first-year law students who have registered on recruitment platforms instead of being hired directly. The situation is worse if you have a degree from a second or third rung law school. In 2021, students from law schools ranked between 101 to 200 made up nearly 53% of hires at big law firms. Now that share has collapsed to just 36%. The few law jobs that are there for freshers are being monopolized by elite law schools. But the worst hit are computer science students. IT jobs have shrunk by 8.5% in the past 3 years in the USA, and the situation is equally bad in the UK. Adzuna, a top recruitment platform, recently estimated that entry-level vacancies in the UK have fallen by 32% between the end of 2022 and the middle of 2025. The biggest decline was in retail, where entry-level jobs declined by 78%. Recruitment in IT fell by 55%, while jobs for freshers in finance dropped by 51%. Now, some of you would have guessed the significance of why Adzuna chose to compare recruitment figures from May 2025 with those from the end of 2022. Yes, it was the launch of ChatGPT. And that brings me to my second point, how AI has already devoured and is continuing to gobble up white-collar jobs that would have otherwise gone to middle-class college graduates. AI has completely wrecked the junior layer in most places. In IT firms, 45% of all production code is now being written by AI agents, replacing young coders who used to do the painstaking grunt work earlier. A Stanford study has flagged this peculiar development, that tech companies are hiring experienced strategists and getting rid of young coders. Jobs for software developers between the age of 22 to 25 has fallen by more than 20% since the coming of AI, while top-level jobs have actually increased by 9%. But the problem with top-level jobs is that there are very few. In finance, AI has dramatically reduced the time needed to perform routine tasks that usually went to freshers. What used to take 6 hours now takes just 10 minutes. An initial merger and acquisition due diligence, which used to take not less than 2 weeks earlier, can now be done in just 4 odd hours. And Citigroup says that 54% of financial jobs are at high risk of being completely automated. In law firms, senior attorneys have much less need for juniors now. Studies show that AI tools are saving individual attorneys up to 10 hours a week. On average, law firms are being able to process 40 to 50% more cases without adding a single person to their headcount. Across industries, this is leading to a sharp decline in white-collar employment. Two things are happening simultaneously. First, freshers are not being recruited, and second, middle managers are being sacked because there are fewer juniors and freshers to supervise. There are silent layoffs and hiring freezes everywhere, some of which are high profile enough to have hit the headlines. Salesforce has almost proudly sacked 4,000 employees. Amazon has let go of 14,000 employees already and plans to sack another 15 to 16,000 more. Microsoft has sacked 15,000 employees. Meta, 3,600 employees. And Accenture retrenched 11,000 employees in a single quarter. But it is also increasingly becoming clear that companies are using AI as an excuse to downsize. Many of them went on a hiring spree right after COVID, expecting a sharp recovery in the global economy. When that did not materialize, they began to correct their headcount. And instead of admitting that they were wrong and they overhired, they're now saying AI has made people redundant. And that has resulted in the somewhat comical acceptance by some of the most vocal backers of AI that they have now sacked far too many human beings and they can't really do without them. For instance, Klarna, the Swedish fintech firm, was among the first to freeze hiring and hand over key tasks to AI. The result was that its headcount fell by 40%. But by the middle of last year, Klarna's CEO admitted that depending too much on AI had reduced the quality of Klarna's services, and the company began rehiring human employees. Part of the reason for hiring freezes and downsizing in the past 1 year has been this FOMO, or the fear of missing out among top managements everywhere. There has been an irrational race towards AI adoption and replacing human beings, which has been overdone, and it is bound to be corrected now. In fact, I had predicted this earlier this year, that white-collar hiring will revive in 2026, but it will ultimately decline forever as AI agents become better and better, and firms also learn how to optimize the use of AI. However, AI is only one half of the problem for the white-collar middle class. The bigger issue is how capitalism itself is changing to shut out the middle class from getting a share of capitalist profits. Across the world, the rich have become even richer, while in many countries, the poor are being propped up through subsidies. Right? This has driven and given birth to a populist politics that sees the white-collar, laptop class as the real enemy. It paints the college-educated as parasites who do not do any productive work but get paid big bucks. So the middle class, which is already becoming economically disempowered, is also losing political clout. No one wants to talk about them. They've lost their voice. And as the middle class has seen its incomes shrink in the past few years, it has also stopped buying things, cut down on eating out, stopped going on holidays, and even reduced its savings and investments. This is a double whammy. When the middle class, which has been the driving force behind modern economy, stops consuming, corporates find it difficult to sell goods and services. That in turn reduces their revenues, so they downsize to keep their profit margins intact. And a large part of those sacked are middle class employees. That is why no one with big money is investing in consumer-facing businesses anymore. All the money is going into AI-driven tech, whose fundamental business model is to replace white-collar employees. It is a vicious cycle from which there doesn't seem to be any immediate escape. The middle class is being sacked because of AI. Middle class consumers are cutting back on consumption because they aren't earning enough. Corporates are seeing their demand decline, so they are sacking even more middle class employees. And that in turn is taking money away from consumer-facing, employment-generating industries to AI firms who are investing that money to build technology that will kill more middle-class jobs. This is the pathway of the extinction of white-collar jobs, and perhaps the path to the end of the middle class itself. The laptop class, as I said, is going extinct. That's it for now, but before I sign off, I want to ask you something. If the middle class is truly going extinct, who do you think benefits the most? Who in your view is to blame? Is it AI? Is it the billionaires? Is it our governments? Or is it the middle class itself that grew too comfortable, too complacent to see this coming? Tell me in the comments below. Your comments help me clarify my own thoughts. And as always, like, comment and share, and do subscribe to my channel so that you get to know as soon as a new video